So quantum computers, they're coming. And if you're in the crypto world, you've probably heard the panic that sounds like a death sentence for Bitcoin. But is it really? There is so much fear and honestly a lot of confusion out there. So today, we're going to cut through all that noise. We're going to separate the real actual threats from the sci-fi panic. So yeah, this is the question, right? Will some super advanced quantum computer just wake up one day, crack the whole system wide open, and poof, all the Bitcoin in the world becomes worthless? Let's figure it out. I'm sure you've heard these arguments before. Things like, oh, it's just hype, another Y2K. Or, hey, don't worry, the banks will get hit long before Bitcoin does. And to be fair, there's a tiny grain of truth to some of them. But the real story here is way, way more interesting than just a, don't worry about it. All right, here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to do a quick quantum computing 101, just so we're all on the same page. Then, and this is key, we'll break down the two completely different ways a quantum computer could threaten Bitcoin. From there, we'll zero in on the real risk, look at the race to build a defense, and then we're going to finish with this fascinating multi-billion-dollar dilemma that so far has no easy answer. Okay, first things first, we have to get our heads around what makes a quantum computer so special. You see, it's not just a faster version of your laptop. It thinks in a totally different way. So your computer, your phone, they all work with bits. And a bit is super simple, right? It's either a 1 or it's a 0. That's it. A quantum computer, though, uses a qubit. And this is where things get weird. Because of a wild property called superposition, a qubit can be a 0, a 1, or get this, both at the exact same time. You've heard of Schrodinger's cat, right? The cat in the box that's both alive and dead until you look at it. That's basically a qubit. And that one strange property is the source of all its power. This maze analogy, it's honestly the perfect way to think about it. Imagine you're trying to solve a super complex maze. A normal computer would try one path, hit a dead end, go all the way back, and then try another path. It's methodical, but slow. A quantum computer, because of those qubits being ones and zeros at the same time, explores every single possible path through the maze simultaneously. It's not just a little bit faster. For certain problems, it's like it has a god's eye view of the solution from the very beginning. An absolute game changer. Okay, lean in for this next part because it is the single most important takeaway from this whole explainer. When people talk about quantum computers breaking Bitcoin, they are almost always mixing up two completely separate and very different problems. On one side, you've got the threat of taking down the entire Bitcoin network, the whole system. On the other side, you've got the threat of cracking open one person's wallet and stealing their coins. One of these is basically a sci-fi doomsday scenario. The other, yeah, that's a very real, very plausible danger that smart people are racing to fix right now. Let's dig into why they're so different. So first, let's just bust a common myth. We call it cryptocurrency, but the Bitcoin system itself, the blockchain, isn't encrypted like a secret message. It's more like a public ledger, a giant open book that absolutely everyone can read. Its security doesn't come from hiding stuff. It comes from thousands of people all watching that public book to make sure no one tries to cheat. You can't really decrypt something that's already public. The actual threat to the network is something called a 51% attack. This is where a single entity gets control of more than half of the network's total mining power. Now, they can't go back and steal old coins, but they could start messing with new transactions. So a quantum computer doesn't get a magic skeleton key here. It would just be a ridiculously fast miner. It's about brute force, not some clever code breaking. So just how fast would this quantum miner be? Well, if you use the best quantum algorithm we know for this kind of guessing game, is called Grover's algorithm, you get an insane speed up. But here's the kicker. Even with that incredible advantage, cracking Bitcoin's core mining function would still take, well, billions of times the age of the universe. So yeah, the system itself, it's going to be just fine. So if the network is a fortress, we're in the clear, right? Not so fast. Because, and this is a big because, while the system is safe, individual wallets are a whole different story. This is where the real quantum vulnerability is hiding. Your Bitcoin wallet is protected by what's called asymmetric encryption. It all starts with your secret private key. From that key, your wallet does some math and very easily calculates a public key, which is used to generate your public Bitcoin address. And here's the magic trick. It's a one-way street. For any normal computer, it is practically impossible to work backwards, to take the public key and figure out the private key. Impossible, that is, unless you have a quantum computer running something called Shor's algorithm. Now, this isn't like the brute force mining algorithm we just talked about. Shor's is a specialist. It was literally designed to do one thing, break this exact kind of one-way math. It doesn't just guess faster. No, it's way smarter. It uses the weirdness of quantum physics to just reverse the math and reveal the private key. It is the quantum master key. Okay, so which wallets are actually at risk here? It's any wallet where the public key has been revealed on the blockchain. For most modern wallets, that only happens the first time you send Bitcoin from that address. So if you have an address you've only ever received funds into, your public key is probably still hidden and safe for now. The most vulnerable wallets, though, the really old ones, from the very early days of Bitcoin, like Satoshi's, which expose their public keys all the time by default. All right, I know that sounds pretty bad, but listen, this isn't happening tomorrow. The good news is that what's happening right now is a race. It's a race between the teams building these powerful quantum computers and the cryptographers who are building the next generation of quantum-resistant defenses. So what's the magic number? To effectively run Shor's algorithm and crack a Bitcoin wallet, experts estimate you would need a quantum computer with around 4,000 stable, high-quality qubits, what they call logical qubits. Now, to put that 4,000 number in perspective, our best machines today have maybe 100 or so physical qubits, and these things are incredibly noisy and error-prone. You need thousands of those fragile things just to create one stable logical qubit. So we are a long way off. The most optimistic predictions say a machine powerful enough might not exist until 2032. The even better news? Experts think it would take about 7 years to fully upgrade the Bitcoin network. So the race is on, but we've got a head start. So what's the big plan? How do we fix this? Well, the leading idea is to create a brand new type of Bitcoin address. And the genius of it is actually pretty simple. With these new addresses, your public key is never revealed on the blockchain, not even when you spend your coins. And if that public key is never out in the open, Shor's algorithm has absolutely nothing to attack. Problem solved. Sounds great, right? Problem solved. Well, not so fast. The technology is one thing. Getting an entire global, decentralized network to adopt it is a whole other beast. A full migration is a massive project. You gotta write the code, get the community to activate it, get every single exchange and wallet makers update their software. But the biggest, trickiest hurdle is that final step. Every single Bitcoin holder on the planet would have to manually move their funds to one of these new safe addresses. And this brings us to the final, fascinating, and maybe unsolvable problem. What do we do about the people who can't move their coins? See, there are an estimated 4 million lost Bitcoin out there, coins sitting in wallets where the owner lost their keys or they passed away. These owners can never perform that manual migration. These coins are just stuck, and that makes them sitting ducks, completely vulnerable and waiting for a quantum attack. And the biggest, most famous prize in that pile of sitting ducks is a cool 1 million Bitcoin belonging to Bitcoin's own creator, Satoshi Nakamoto. They're all sitting in those old, highly vulnerable types of addresses. We're talking about a multi-billion-dollar bounty just waiting there. A great treasure, ready to be claimed by the first person to build a quantum computer powerful enough to take it. And this leaves the entire Bitcoin community with a truly impossible choice. On the one hand, do you change the code to freeze all these lost, vulnerable coins, protecting the market from a sudden crash, but in doing so, violating the most sacred principle of property rights? Or, on the other hand, do you uphold those principles at all costs, allow this great treasure to be claimed, and risk the absolute catastrophic chaos that would unleash on the market? There is no easy answer. It's a debate about the very soul of Bitcoin, and it's one the community is going to have to face sooner or later. What would you choose?